Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this past weekend, of course, Ryan Garcia predictably defeated Javier Fortuna by a 6th round TKO. One-sided fight, it was what it was. You know, we all expected Ryan Garcia to win and win decisively, and that's exactly what he did. He did what he needed to do. But of course, after that fight, many people were speculating in regards to Ryan Garcia's future. He himself has said that he's not willing to go down to 135 and that he wants to campaign at 140. And straight after the fight, he called out Tank Davis. Now, listen, I'm under no illusions that this fight will happen next. I think it's a very hard fight to make due to various circumstances. Of course, Tank Davis is with the PBC and he's signed with Showtime, whereas Ryan Garcia is with Golden Boy and DAZN. So there's network differences here. Both promotional companies have had their differences in the past. So let's be real, it would take a lot to make this fight happen, but regardless, it's a fight in which I would really love to see. It's a fight I would have a lot of interest in. First and foremost, stylistically, it should gel for a really intriguing fight, no matter how long it lasts. Both guys are big punchers. Both guys are quick, both guys are explosive, you know, good athletes, that sort of thing. Both guys have technical deficiencies, but I think it's one of those fights where you match these two together, you're going to be on the edge of your seat, waiting for something to happen. Even when there's lulls in the action, you're just going to be waiting for somebody to land that big punch. I think it's got the makings of a really sort of dramatic fight, which could be over in a blink of an eye, and you know, those sort of fights always intrigue me, quite frankly. And yeah, I mean, first and foremost, like I said, I don't see this fight happening next. I would like to be wrong, but you know, there is just too much in the way. But this fight, in my opinion, given where both guys are at in their careers right now, both guys are unbeaten, both guys are garnering quite respectable fan bases. Tank Davis is quite big in like the hip-hop world, whereas Ryan Garcia, I guess, is popular in the TikTok world. You know, he's got a lot of 13-year-old girl fans. But yeah, both guys are generating a fan base kind of outside of boxing. So put these two guys together, I think this fight would generate a lot of interest amongst the casuals. And when you look in American boxing and boxing in general, really across the West, there's not many fights out there that can generate that sort of appeal, that sort of pull, that could get in the casual fans, and I think this is one of those rare fights. People may say Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence, and that would be a big fight, but I think primarily that fight would generate, that would captivate sports fans, even not necessarily boxing fans. People will buy into that fight, but with Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia, I think they can attract a whole new demographic to watch that particular fight. So, you know, pay-per-view wise and what this fight could generate, I think this fight could really surprise people if it were to happen. So financially, this fight would make a lot of sense, but like I said, there's a lot of egos in the way before this fight can happen. But to me at least, you know, people have questioned Ryan Garcia's competition, and the same for Tank Davis. Neither guy seems that willing to fight the likes of a Lomachenko or a Devin Haney, etc. Both guys are kind of playing into this celebrity kind of market. You know, they're trying to be these attractions and big ticket sellers without really fighting the dangerous contenders who may not have as big a name as they do. But, you know, if you put these two guys together, it would be a huge fight. And it's an interesting one as well, because when this fight was first talked about several years ago, I think most people were unanimous in saying Tank Davis knocks this guy out. However, I don't see it as the same sort of fight now, because I was the same back then. You know, 2018, 2019, I was picking Tank Davis very confidently, but I can't say that I do now, which makes this fight even more intriguing, because I'll say this, with Tank Davis, he's been a guy who, when I first saw him fight on the come-up, before the Pedraza fight, I was very high on Tank Davis. I felt the guy was extremely dynamic in terms of his offense, clearly had power, hand speed, good combinations, that sort of thing, very offensively gifted. However, since the Pedraza fight in particular, I think you'll be hard-pressed to say Tank Davis has improved as a fighter. In fact, many people, including myself, believe he's regressed. I don't believe he's the same sort of fighter as he was in the Pedraza fight. Now, the reasons for that could be a whole host of reasons. Whether he's not taking boxing seriously, whether he's not living right outside the ring, or in my opinion, primarily, it's down to his weak competition. He's not really been keeping sharp. As the saying goes, iron sharpens iron. Well, Tank's really not been fighting ironclad opponents. Isaac Cruz turned out to be tougher, but I think that was more... I think that was more by mistake than anything. I don't think there was banking on Isaac Cruz being that successful in that fight, quite frankly. So yeah, I think Tank's low level of competition has drastically affected him. For me, his output has dropped. He's far more of a counterpuncher now, where he'll be pouring with his lead southpaw right hand, and then he'll be looking for that big left hand behind it. He'll try and draw you in and knock you out. His output has dropped drastically, and we're seeing now in fights where he's losing multiple rounds. I mean, many people felt that the Isaac Cruz fight could have been a draw. In fact, many people actually said Isaac Cruz won. I was very concerned when I saw Rolando Romero taking rounds of Tank Davis. I don't care what anybody says. You can dress Rolly up as you want, but he's crap. He's not an elite level fighter. Yeah, he's a big lightweight, relatively strong, but he's got no skill set. He's bang average. I mean, I think bang average is being extremely kind. So for me, Tank doesn't hold the same standing that he once did a few years ago. I don't think he's got any better. His footwork, the flaws in his footwork still remain, where he'll drag that back leg, kind of like Adrian Broner. To me, he's just not as impressive as he was back then. That's how I see it. Whereas Ryan Garcia is a different kettle of fish, in my opinion. Ryan Garcia's had his problems, as we know. After the Luke Campbell fight, he went AWOL, never fought for the rest of 2021 with quote-unquote mental health issues. So I still question Ryan Garcia's mentality, but in terms of his technical prowess and that sort of thing, I noticed some improvements in the Javier Fortuna fight, as I was mentioning in my post-fight review. It seems now like Ryan Garcia has settled with a trainer that works for him. I like the camaraderie between Ryan Garcia and Joe Goossen. I was noting in the corner when Joe Goossen was speaking, Ryan Garcia was very attentive, like he was interested in what Joe Goossen had to say. And even technically in that Javier Fortuna fight, I felt I didn't think he was wasting quite as many punches as he did in previous fights. And he wasn't quite as wild because Ryan Garcia always had a bad habit of firing out of range, throwing himself off balance, and putting himself in bad positions. But he wasn't doing that quite as much against Javier Fortuna. He was much more careful with his offense, and he was picking some really nice shots. He got aggressive when he had to, forced for pace when he had to, tried to break Javier Fortuna down, trying different things, And all around, I felt Ryan's balance in general was just far better in the fight with Javier Fortuna, and he gave Fortuna a lot less to work with, whereas against the likes of Luke Campbell and even against Emmanuel Tagoe was catching him quite frequently in between his punches, but there was a lot less of that in the Fortuna fight. He got his distance correct, which is something that Ryan Garcia had always struggled with, to keep a guy at the end of his punches, but he did that against Fortuna. And as we know, that's the attributes he has against Tank, is height and reach. He's a much bigger man. So for me, I see Ryan Garcia as a guy, although he still has flaws, especially defensively, he still holds that chin up in the air. Against ambush fighters who try to rush him, Ryan Garcia will back up in a straight line with his chin in the air, hands kind of low. And against a guy like Tank Davis, who is explosive, who can close the gap quickly, that could be a recipe for disaster. But overall, I see Ryan Garcia as a guy who is making improvements. It seems like he's trying to learn in the gym and trying to implement new things to his game. Whereas with Tank, I don't really see the same thing, which is why I would be a lot less certain of him going into this fight now than I would be sort of 3 years ago. But for me, that makes it much more intriguing. I think this could be a massive fight in boxing. I really believe when it comes to Tank and Ryan Garcia, this is the fight that both promotional companies should be working towards. I believe it does big business. Both guys have their fan bases. Both guys can bring in different demographics. Plus you'll get the hardcore boxing fans and the casual boxing fans. I think this fight, if it were to get made, would do a lot better than people probably imagine. I think this fight will do very well on pay-per-view. And of course, I think both guys, especially Tank, they both need this sort of fight to get to that next level. Neither guy has fought one of their contemporaries, you know, their fellow contenders, like fellow elite contenders. Neither guy's fought that guy yet, so both guys for each other make a lot of sense in terms of legacy and getting towards that next level. So for me, this fight is a no-brainer. If I had my way, this is the fight that happens next for both men. But you know how it is. I mean, I can't see it happening, quite frankly. I think Ryan Garcia more than likely fights Jojo Diaz. I think that's a very likely possibility. And as for Tank Davis, God only knows. I think the best we can hope for Tank is an Isaac Cruz rematch. But it pains me to be so negative about a great fight. You know, I know Tank and Ryan are not exactly everybody's cup of tea in boxing, but get these two guys together, I would be invested, I have to say. But yeah, I mean, share your thoughts below. What do you make of this fight? First and foremost, who would you be picking right now in this fight? Because like I said, a couple of years ago, I would have been picking Tank confidently. But right now, I don't know. I really don't know. I'd have to think about it. But yeah, share your thoughts below. And do you think this fight can happen next? Am I being pessimistic? Share your thoughts below. It's been your guy Delboy. Peace.